Now we're in Illustrator, and let's take a look at its capabilities when you're working with web graphics. First, let's go to a new page. So we'll start with a new, and you'll see right now that this is a profile for print, the typical letter size document. And so it's got, the dimensions in pixel or in points, and you can see the color mode here. CMYK, raster effects, meaning shadows and blur effects and things like that, will be 300 pixels per inch, and doesn't align objects to a pixel grid. Now if we change, go to web, magically it changes to RGB, 72 pixels per inch for the screen effects, and it clicks on this align new objects to pixel grid. So changes our units to pixels also. It also has some preset sizes for real web pages in addition to the monitor sizes that Photoshop gives you. I'm going to make a little smaller one though. I'll do a 640 page right now for demos. So here we have our page, and one thing to watch out for is your stroke. Your stroke will by default split shapes down the middle of the shape boundary, and when you have a even number of pixels in your stroke, it's going to show your sizes and positions as half of a pixel, and that can really get you confused until you realize, oh, I've got the stroke on. And if it's splitting a stroke, messes me all up. So I'm turning the stroke off. If you do use strokes, you can try to adjust for those. You can also, when you're making shapes, have the stroke go to the inside of the shape, which doesn't mess up the spacing and the alignment of it. Okay, so here's a simple shape. I have the transform window on here so I can see the numbers, and I'm looking at the XY coordinates of where it is on the page, and I'm looking at the width and height of it. So you can watch these readouts when you change the position and also when you change the height. And you'll notice that as I change things, it always lands on a whole number. 46, 48, doesn't land in between. If I had the align to pixel grid turned off for this page, it would have been making me things that were not really aligned to any particular pixel. And as you can see now with the align turned off, I have fractional pixels sometimes. And this can be kind of a hit or miss thing, but right now a height of 52.667 pixels. So what happens with that is if you're doing web graphics, everything on the web wants to land right on a pixel. You don't want to have a nice clean shape like this that displays on several pixels because it will anti-alias. Let's take a look at this really nice trick here, pixel preview. And you can see, we'll get it in tighter here. You can see that along the edges here, it doesn't go from green to white. It goes from green to pale green to white. That's because this isn't sitting exactly on a pixel, and so the difference in there has to be adjusted with an anti-alias pixel. Now if I do any kind of adjustment with this, first of all, I could simply go align to pixel, and it would change 40 and 52 to 40 and 53, and it would put these right on the pixels, and now I have no. Scale that down, bring it in here. You can see that we don't have any more of those half pixel edges, no anti-aliasing problems anymore. Turn that back off again, and right now I have pixel preview turned on, which is almost another form of the align to pixel. So I'm turning that off so I can mess this thing up again. You move it around on the page a little bit and you start getting fractional pixels. So you can work with it on, with it off, depending on what situation you have to deal with. But now here I am back to the anti-aliased edges. But with Pixel Preview turned on, you make any kind of adjustment to the edge at all, and it snaps right back down onto whole pixels again. So it's almost like snapping this align to pixel grid thing back on. So that is kind of the things to watch out for in Illustrator. Is if you're making menu boxes or little buttons, icons, things like that, and they have horizontal and vertical lines, you don't want them landing to make ugly anti-aliased edges. You want them nice and sharp. You don't want to have them get out of control. So you don't want this effect here. So you want to work with the align to grid. Perfect. Nice clean shapes. Now, here's the inescapable reality of raster images, is that if it isn't horizontal and can't follow, or vertical, if it can't follow a line of pixels along, it still has to anti-alias that shape. So if it gets off of the horizontal or vertical, you're still back at the anti-aliased effect. So you can't totally avoid the fuzzy edges, but on a web page, if you can design your images that land right on a pixel as best they can, then you're at least halfway there, or depending on how much, what the percentage of these things is, it's partial way there. So the pixel preview can't even fix you until you get to horizontal and vertical. And if I fiddle around with this enough, I can move these things onto horizontal and vertical and get them back. But that is the story of Illustrator and watching out for align to pixel grid, turning the pixel grid on when you make the initial page, and the pixel preview up in the view that will allow you to see what your pixels will look like, because the vector is always going to show you this perfect shape, and you would not know that there was trouble coming down the road until you turned on the pixel preview and you go, uh-oh. So that's the story of Illustrator.